Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Pat Hughes in this edition of Rising, and Pat, MS and Money put out a list this week of the 50 cities in America that people are fleeing. Got some good news for Illinois. There are cities on the list that are not in Illinois.
That's good.
Yeah.
Of the 50?
Yeah, we don't have all 50, but we do have some big metropolitan areas that are on the list, sort of indicative of the problem here that we've talked about at length. Peoria, 18th. Rockford, 11th. The St. Louis metro area, so include like Metro East, and we know this too, it's kind of southern Illinois. 4th, that metropolitan area in terms of people leaving. And then number 1 with a bullet, and I do mean that literally, is Chicago, kind of the Chicago, Naperville, Elgin region is the city/region leading the nation in flight. That doesn't sound promising for Chicago. We've talked about this before many times. And nothing is done about it, so people continue to leave.
Yeah, and this isn't like flight, Dan, from Chicago to Peoria, right? I mean, this is these people,
I don't think so.
As indicated by this is covering, basically the entire state of Illinois, right? You have the south part, you've got the western part in Rockford, you got the southwestern part in Peoria, and you got the northeastern part in Chicago. So you basically have the entire state. People are fleeing. They're fleeing to other states where there's more and better opportunity. And I think this is so interesting, thinking about our just most recent segment. You've got Rahm Emanuel being a complete jackass to a reporter, and his city that he's been in charge of since 2011 and is seeking to continue to be in charge of is bleeding population. It's bleeding taxpayers. His region is suffering. And he is not willing to look in the mirror and say, what can I do to change this trend? Because like you said before, he doesn't care about that. He just cares about his position of power. This is a death spiral that'll lead to our second segment, which is the ultimate Chicago, state of Illinois bankruptcy.
Well, it's interesting that there's some countervailing data that came out this week as well. U.S. Census 2010 to 2016. Chicago did actually pretty well in attracting upwardly mobile younger people. So outpacing Houston and San Francisco when it came to attracting heads of household under 45 years old making more than $100,000. So that's sort of, that's good news. You're talented, upwardly mobile people, but it's tempered by the fact that all you're doing is sort of increasing the spread with respect to the hollowing out that's occurring because you still have the net out-migration leading the nation, number one. Number two, we know from some data analysis Illinois Policy Institute has done that per some of the previous census data, it was 35 to 54-year-olds that were leading the out-migration. So they may come here for a job for a time, and then when they're moving up to that next rung or the kids are ready to go to, to get school age or there's a break in their schooling, grade school to high school, they're leaving to go elsewhere to hotter markets, better quality of life, lower cost. And the other thing that's not included there is, and I'd love to know the answer, I'm just raising it, the number of those individuals who work for government in some form or fashion or are tax funds dependent, right? Because we know the biggest employers in Chicago and Cook County, CPS, state of Illinois, federal government. So it's one thing to look at this and say, we're attracting the best and the brightest, the high earners, and that's going to be our salvation. It seems to me it's not happening fast enough. We don't really have a handle on the distribution of that population. And, by the way, you're having the middle hollowed out, and so that's not sustainable. That's not stable. You have to have a robust middle income community to have a stable community.
Yeah, so you've just broken it down perfectly. My anecdotal feeling on this is, first of all, number one, there's just not enough of those people to sustain the economy. Just like you said, there's just not enough of them. Number two, what it doesn't tell, and I think this IPI data you referenced sort of gives an indication, is first of all, Chicago's a beautiful world-class city, and so when you don't live here and you come here, you're all excited. Hey, I'm going to live in Chicago. I've got this big, great job. And then you come here, Dan, and you realize how hard it is to live here. You realize how punished you are by property taxes, by income taxes, by how poor the infrastructure is, what a scam the schools are. If you live in the city of Chicago, you realize you can't fundamentally send your kid to a Chicago public school. And then you get educated between 35 and 45.
Yeah.
And then you say, I'm out of here for Carmel, Indiana.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's a good point too. The also, just to emphasize that point, not enough of them. I mean, this is sort of the same argument you hear all the time. Chicago is this beautiful city. If you're in the Gold Coast, or if you're in River North or South Loop or Lincoln Park, Old Town, yeah, and that's about 3% of the city. So the idea that you can have a couple 300,000 people that are living in nice neighborhoods and doing well, they're going to be fine and everything's going to be fine for them, while the rest of the city, the other 2.5 million people in the outlying areas, see their neighborhoods crumble, burn down, be gang infested, and it's not going to impact that sliver of the population ultimately.
Those people are waiting for Bane to show up, and there's going to be an uprising. It's going to be just like that. That's what it'll ultimately be.
Well, and all you have to do, now that we're into the summer months, is walk around those gilded areas of the city that are the source of most of the revenue generation, like the Mag Mile, and see the police presence. They're sort of retreating to protecting the golden goose rather than trying to radiate out growth from the city center. And those are two very different things.